What do a vagina-faced alien, a Soviet torture expert, and a floating pedophile have in common? They were all action figures. That's right, we're talking about action figures based on R-rated movies. But there was a phenomenon, which I think doesn't happen today, which is that they made R-rated movies into action figures, but for kids. Like, they do it all the time now. Like, it's not surprising when you see an R-rated action figure. Because only people buy action figures are people my age, right? So there's no like children going out to buy action figures. So they all make them for us, and so they'll make them for any horrible thing that you can possibly imagine. But what's awesome is back in the day, they made them for all kinds of R-rated movies, but they made them specifically for kids. So here we're gonna list and rank 10 best action figures made from R-rated movies, for kids.
For kids.
And you have to understand, back in the day, parents didn't give a shit. So I notoriously, I probably said this many times, my mother did not give a shit. And therefore, I watched all kinds of R-rated trash way before my time. And so for me, it was like when I was buying the action figures, I was very conscious of what I was buying. I knew what I was getting. What's really funny about this like weird phenomenon of these children's toys is that, any kid might just buy the toy based on, stumbling into the toy store and saying, hey, that looks like a cool toy, and then grab it without really knowing the context of what's going on. And well, I'm here to put it in context, all right? Because if you took that home and you watched the movie, you would see there was some really horrific shit here that you were playing with. And there were times when parents like lost it and flipped out and then get all angry. But my parents wouldn't. They didn't give a shit, like I said. So anyway, here's a list of 10 R-rated movies turned into action figures. Number 10, I'm going to go with number 10. And this is me, by the way. This is me when I was 1979. Look, this is me with my alien. And I love how, like, this is my favorite picture of myself, which is like hanging out with the alien like he's my buddy, and so this is the 1979 Alien. At the time, Star Wars had come out and gone crazy, making tons of money for Kenner, creating this iconic toy line. And so Kenner looked at what else could we turn into a toy, and so they picked Alien.
You alien action figure.
Quick, shut the L off. The alien's locked out now. He got through. Shh. Give up. Alien can't be beat.
Now, the weird thing about Alien is, if you know Alien, that the alien designed by H.R. Giger is, I think that's how you say it, is really like made up of a series of sex organs, right? Like, basically the way the alien works is, a little face hugger pops out of an egg. It's got basically balls. It's basically a ball sack, right, with a spine. It drops on your face. It's sort of like, Little John, you do this for me. I don't want to say it. In your mouth, okay? And then like a day later, you're pregnant, okay? And then the chest burster pops out, and right. So and Giger notoriously made the alien to look like a sex organ. It was, so it's basically, it's just like, hey kids, here's a big sex organ for you to play with, right? But whatever, I didn't care. The toy flopped, way too scary. Parents didn't want to buy it. It was big and unruly, had a lot of sharp edges. I have mine to this day. It's one of my prized possessions, and I love it, and always loved the thing. And I'm glad I have this picture to remember it by. Number 9, we have the Terminator. Now, Terminator, again, another one where this is just not for kids. This is a bloody action movie, and I think with lots of blood and guts and a pretty heavy body count. But what I love about this toy line in particular is you got one set where you basically could put the Terminator exoskeleton in a little chamber and just like cover him with liquid flesh. So you're just like covering him with flesh.
Endoskeleton, the Bioflesh Regenerator. Activate!
Now you can create your own Terminator with the Bioflesh Regenerator.
I'm back to protect.
But then, like, when you pop the thing out, right, and you've got your Arnold Schwarzenegger, now covered with flesh, he's naked. He's basically naked. So it's just basically covered him with, we're seeing the Arnold that appears in the beginning of Terminator, where he pops out of nowhere, completely naked, and starts invading the town looking for Sarah Connor. So it's just a weird choice. Why make this into a toy? Okay, next, I'm going to cheat a little bit. And I'm going to give you a PG-13 movie. And I'm going to tell you why I think this is relevant. Because this movie should not be PG-13, all right? So this is the Mola Ram figure from the Temple of Doom. Now, this is the movie I believe that PG-13 was created for, right? And so, because Spielberg and Lucas had gone out and they had made this movie that was way too violent, way too excessive, way too scary, and but they had a lot of power, and so they could pull. I think Spielberg was, like, notoriously, by the way, when he made Temple of Doom, he was going through some shit, right? He was not okay. He was going through divorce. He was a little messed up. He wasn't really all there. He's talked about this a little bit, and so, the Temple of Doom just goes off the rails. It's actually my favorite Indiana Jones movie, personally. I think it's absolutely amazing. I showed it to my kids recently, and my daughter was just like trembling in a corner afterwards. I was like, oh, I really didn't realize it was this horrible. Because, like, if you don't remember, Mola Ram's power is he can essentially, stick his fingers and pull your heart out through your chest. He pulls a heart out, he tosses it into some fire, and so he's pretty scary and a little bit over the top for a children's toy. Not that I have a problem with that, because I play with much more violent shit. Speaking of which, getting a little bit aside, this is not on the list because he's not from an R-rated movie, but it would behoove me to at least mention that there's a couple of R-rated figures that were made from G.I. Joe. One would have to be, of course, Pimp Daddy Destro. I mean, why would you dress a character like this unless you were intending to create a pimp action figure? I don't know. In addition to Pimp Daddy Destro, we also have the Headman, who is literally a drug dealer. So G.I. Joe made a drug dealer action figure for kids. It was supposed to be like, hey, kids, drugs are bad, whatever. But, I mean, you had a drug dealer, and he looks exactly like a pimp. So, very cool. Hasbro had no shits given, and they gave us a nice little drug dealer and a pimp action figure in our little toy line. But anyway, I digress. Now we back to R-rated movies. Next in line, we have the Toxic Avenger. Now, the Toxic Avenger had its own cartoon. This is made by Playmate, the same company that made the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And they actually really look a lot like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles figures and would fit well in that universe. And they're, similar size and colorful and cartoony. And they come with slime effects, which is kind of cool. So it'll be great, except for if your kid then stumbles across the Toxic Avenger movie, which no kid should see. It has organs being ripped out. It has tons of nudity. The Toxic Avenger was made by Trauma Films, which is a company known for making cheapo movies that, were exploitation movies. They focused on lots of nudity, lots of sex, lots of excessive violence, and they turned the Toxic Avenger into their big hit, and it became a kid's show. So again, weird, just keep your kid away from the source material. Number 6, Rambo and the Force of Freedom. Now, as a big Rambo fan, I had seen the movies. Again, I could watch anything I wanted, so it didn't faze my mom. But then they came out with the Rambo cartoon, which wasn't very much like the movie at all. But what I think is funny about this is if you look at the Rambo movie and then the cartoon, they didn't do what RoboCop did. So RoboCop, had some sense, which is RoboCop had this an R-rated movie turned into a cartoon, and they came up with its own set of characters for the cartoon. Other than RoboCop, other than Nancy, other than Ed 209. The villains were all new. They were created for the cartoon. Well, what Rambo did not do is it did not use completely new villains. It actually has the villain from the movie Rambo, for First Blood Part 2. And what's great about this is, like, this guy is a Soviet torture expert. This guy, like, straps Rambo into and is like and electrocutes him for like a scene that goes on forever, right? So it's like, hey kids, let's play with the torturer. You know, that's basically what's going on here, which I think is hilarious. Another thing to mention here in the Rambo toy line is they had an extraordinarily controversial figure in Nomad. Felt like a Islamic stereotype. It was heavily protested and apparently eventually taken off shelves. I have one. Number 5, Commando. Arnold Schwarzenegger, one of his most violent movies, and turned into a toy for kids. Now, there's not much to talk about these toys other than they are absolute dog shit. This is one of the worst looking action figures I've ever seen. Not really enough to pull from the movie to even warrant, any more discussion. But look at this. Look at that turd of an action figure. Pass. Number 4. This is 1987. A new toy line is proposed, Max Effects. It's actually going to be really awesome. It sounds incredible. I'd like to go back in time and see this line through. I want to see the cartoon they would produce. Because basically the idea is you got Max Effects. He's an effects master. But whatever effects he puts on, and he takes on the powers of that. So he could be like the Wolfman, he could be Dracula, he could be Frankenstein, and he would have all the powers of the monster that he creates. Awesome idea. Totally could have been great. Unfortunately, the only figure they ever made was Freddy Krueger. And when parents got the idea that a Freddy Krueger action figure, this is an action figure who is basically a pedophile, serial child murderer, who's horribly disfigured, they thought maybe their kid shouldn't play with that. I don't know why. So Max Effects was officially destroyed, and you can still get some still find a Max Effects figure online, actually relatively inexpensively. But I think it's a shame because it was a really cool idea, and I would have loved to have seen where it would have gone. It had the ability to create villains and had a few different figures come out.
Lights, camera, action! There's a man called Max, he's in the special effects. Special effects! Hey Fred, thought you were dead, put your face on. Jason, special effects!
When you see some of the original sculpts that were made for this, they're pretty great. And this would have been an awesome line that died way too soon from some uptight assholes who can't handle their kids playing with serial child murderers, whatever. Get over it. Toughen up, people. Suck it up. Number 3, RoboCop. How can you not love turning Paul Verhoeven's incredibly violent, satirical movie into an action figure? I mean, for kids, the great thing about RoboCop is I did see it when it came out. Absolutely excessively violent. There's the scene where he becomes, before he becomes RoboCop, we just watch a man essentially torn to pieces by bullets. What's weird about Paul Verhoeven and making any kind of Paul Verhoeven movie into a Star Wars style like action figure line is that Verhoeven made almost like anti-movies. He made movies in which the heroes were not necessarily heroic. They arc the same way as a heroic movie. They're just strange, satirical, extremely violent, extremely excessive movies. And I don't know why a kid would want to play with them, except I did. I bought those things up right away. And for me, it was not about the cartoon. The cartoon, which I did kind of like, I love that movie. They had some pretty cool features, too. They had cap firing weapons.
RoboCop and evil ED-260 face off with rapid repeat cap firing.
And they had a pretty good collection of bad guy scum, none of them which were really from the movie. But, man, who does not want a cool Paul Verhoeven movie created in action figure form? Give me the Showgirls action figures next, please. I want grinding action Elizabeth Berkley.
Showgirls.
I'm going to cheat here again. And that's because Dune, 1984, Dune was a PG-13 movie, not an R-rated movie. But if you were a kid in 1984, you saw Dune, that shit scarred you for life, okay? No kid should see Dune. I remember like being all excited about it. Anytime you saw some sort of, science fiction movie was coming out, you were always thrilled. You wanted another Star Wars. There wasn't enough Star Wars. They didn't come out with them fast enough. You just wanted something like it, and nothing ever fit the bill. And so anytime there was something like it, I went out and rushed out and saw it. And man, sitting through Dune, it was just, it's slow, it's boring, it's creepy, it's weird, it just does not work. Even though it's PG-13, I'm placing this on the list, and I feel comfortable doing that, is that their choice in action figures. Now, one, they had Sting, which was very cool. I ended up picking up a Sting because I'm a big Police fan, so that's the only one I got. But in addition to Sting, they had Baron Harkonnen. Now, like, if you see the movie, Baron Harkonnen is basically a giant, floating, obese man with, like, goiters and, like, all over his face and shit, and he's a pedophile. Like, he's just, like... He's got a hairway, and like the action figure reflects that. The action figure has a hairway, and is just a grotesque giant man. So just for having that hideous action figure, I think this deserves a high spot on this list. Number one. Okay, this is, once again, Paul Verhoeven has made a movie that looks like a Star Wars, I guess, and they decide, let's make toys out of it. This is 1997 Starship Troopers by Galoob. Now, if you've seen the movie Starship Troopers, you know it's completely just a bad idea to make an action figure line out of this thing. First of all, the entire movie, and Paul Verhoeven again, he makes these things, his movies are more like anti-movies, right? Where like they have the arc of the movie almost to parody it. And everybody in the protagonists are often, not good people or not people that we should look up to and are treated that way. And then they have the arc of a normal movie, but there's some sort of bizarre commentary going on. And never is this more true than in Starship Troopers, where Paul Verhoeven casts, shallowly beautiful people as his heroes, who are basically fascist soldiers colonizing a peaceful world, and those aliens fight back as they should, right? So they're even dressed like Nazis at point. So Galoob completely ignores all of this and just, throws them in a package and sells you the action figures of these sort of shallow, vapid soldiers, turning the fascists into heroes, just like the movie is not doing. But what makes this the absolute most screwed up version of an action figure, most R-rated version of an action figure, is the brain bug alien. So now the brain bug alien, now if you watch the brain bug alien scene in the movie Starship Troopers, you will see that the brain bug's mouth is a vagina. It is not even subtly a vagina. It is a full-on vagina. Not only is it a vagina, but it is a vagina full of fluids. Okay, so I'm going to show you, but I'm going to it's actually that bad. I'm going to just blur it out. Okay. You're a little kid, 1997. You get your little alien battle, and you break that out, and you've got just like female anatomy staring you in the face. So this makes this the weirdest. If you want to see more action figure weirdness, check out this. If you want to see more discussion on action figure lines from the 80s, 90s, check out my list of the 20 greatest action figure lines of the 80s.